Hello, welcome back. Tonight I will speak about a book that I am planning to write in the future called Clauneck. And in this recording I speak about Clauneck, and it is a playlist where there are different recordings. And I did some other recordings on other subjects on my books, but I haven't done on Clauneck since a longer time. And in the other recordings I was discussing about the name Clauneck, about appearance, about origin, about all those symbols and elements that are around Clauneck, about the palace, about the ornaments, about the mirrors, about the way Clauneck looks with the turban, with the horns, with the black skin, the aspects of what it means or how I interpreted it. Say, well, it is of course my own interpretation. Say, well, I'm a writer. I use my fantasy and my intellectual mind as well, of course, to meditate on a subject. And with Clauneck was different because in general I write a book and then I speak about the book or about a character, but with Clauneck was the other way around. I did not write yet the Grimoire, so I'm somehow enjoying this aspect as well too. And yeah, as I said, Clauneck does carry many very interesting things that I already, so to say, discovered about him, and that I will definitely include in the book. Because well, it does have a purpose. No, it's not like I'm just talking without sense or talking without meaning. It's well, my steps are planned. No, I know what I'm supposed to do, what my wish is to do, my plans. And when talking about Clauneck, I say, well, there are many beautiful elements that I have found in his persona, in his character, or the story. You know, so well, the story already has in my mind a beautiful beginning, and it was helpful for me as well too to meditate on the symbols and see what they mean. And say, well, Clauneck does have a interesting spirit, or is different than something we have seen until now. So well, it does carry that element of uniqueness. It's very unique. And yeah, so like the steps of writing a book, they're always a little bit different. Sometimes you get an idea, or sometimes you get a title, sometimes it's a name or the story, or sometimes you decide, I want to write about this subject. No, it's always a little bit different. It's not that it's always different. Every book is different, even the process of writing me, but there are some steps which are the same, no? The editing part, or the steps that I have to take to bring it to paper. But the most interesting part is of course the beginning, or the part of the inspiration, of the part of creating the story, creating the book, and creating the character. Especially for me, I like to put a lot of work in creating the character as well as of course the story. So well, they are one and the same, no? So well, the character and the story, as they say, it's one and the same. So well, the character creates the story, or the story represents the character, no? And at the same time, it can be different as well, no? It is not just one rule. Writing does not have, it has of course grammatic rules, and but it does not have on the creative part, no, it's the element of freedom. So it moves with that element of the writing and the element of the artistic expression of that book, and then it's the more physical, to say, well, the book per se. And speaking about Clauneck, what gives me most pleasure is that fine, detailed, or I say detailed type of work, or tailored. I like to play with words in general. The meaning of words for me It's like the expression of the words or the meaning of the words, it is something essential in that part as well. This well in Clauneck specific, it came a lot of French words that we had, and it moves on that French elements of something exquisite, of special, or plaisir, of pleasure. We spoke about these elements too, and the symbols too, of course, always, especially when we speak about a king. Of course, the symbols of a king are most important. So, one has to study that as well. It is an important part of the reading or starring of a character. So, in a movie script, the lines have to fit. It's not like, it's like everything what is said has to fit. It is the same as in a book. It has to fit. And Clauneck, I think, is more on the part of the spirit of the freedom. I see very much that aspect of freedom in him. Almost to say, that is very much Clauneck, that element of freedom. And he's allowed to say, a person who enjoys his freedom and others people's freedom. That it is, of course, in general, freedom is an important aspect. And say, the artistic freedom or there is a artistic freedom that comes within the way he appears. There is the element of something artistic, something or someone that is free. The way he looks, he has his shirt unbuttoned. There's that element of the chest. That freedom, the way he appears. For me, it speaks very much to the element. It's aware, of course, the element of the lion, which we see around him, is an element of freedom as well, the lion. And of course, the element of the king is the most predominant aspect of him, and that is the one strongest comes forward as the element of the king. That's how it's supposed to be. The king does carry through his name, through his persona, that role or that power of the king. So, the king is the king. Of course, it does have that element. It is nothing strange. You say, there are many different elements, and they all combine together to speak the same. You say, it is a king. One can read the elements and say, it is the head of a lion, or we have the scepter, or we have the crown, or we have, for these different symbols. Say, Clauneck doesn't carry his crown. He doesn't have a specific crown. Say, is he a king or not? Say, can we tell? Say, how can one tell? It's very much Clauneck. Say, that element of a question that leaves you in thinking. It is as I said, Clauneck says, a special pleasure. It is a special pleasure to discuss, And so, general discussion is the element of the freedom. So, if three people sit outside and look at the sky, one says, what a beautiful moon tonight, and there's a specific feeling they share. It's the element of that freedom. So, it is not a normal discussion, but now we're outside, we can, it's an element of, it's very much Clauneck. It does appear in those elements as well. Or the moment you meet somebody and you say, it's very much Clauneck, how that meeting goes and so on. It is the element of luck. There is the element of Clauneck. Of course, Clauneck always speaks about magic. But they will say he's a king, So one should never forget the element of the king. That's why the king is and should be most forward, the most powerful, important element, that he comes through with it, that what he carries. You cannot not be a king if you're a king. You cannot, it is something that's most essential. That's why I repeat, so it does fit to this idea as well. The king knows that he's king. And of course that changes the perspective of the king as well. So the king says, I am the king. So that's very beautiful to represent the power of the king, the way he talks, the way he expresses himself, the way he shows himself. So how should he represent himself as what he is? You would say it does. I would say it does not The element of the king is not carried in the crown, not at all. The element of the king is carried in the king. He's the king. No, so as I read, Clauneck teaches the right focus, so the right meaning of things. So well, if it's black and white or white and black, and it can get confusing, and one is red and one is blue, like what you do, no? How you find the answer, how you get out of that. That's the element of Clauneck. It's a very intellectual element as well. So well, it is a nice discussion, no? How maybe it can be proved in a billiard play, or maybe it can be proved in a simple sentence, or maybe in 3 numbers, or maybe it can be proved in a glass of champagne, or like the element of chance, the element of luck. It's very much Clauneck. But I don't want to give a false persona or false impression to say, well, even this example is part of a feeling that he carries. It is not what Clauneck does, it's not what Clauneck is. But sometimes examples come in that way for one to understand something. Well, say, if we are to be honest, we are speaking at the element of the genius. Well, the genius, who is the genius? Who is a genius? What genius means? And say, it's a good question, no? You say, well, a good genius or not so good genius, or once you're genius, you cannot go higher than that, or what's the limit on that? No, so they're all interesting discussion points. And say, well, Clauneck is about that element of the thrill of the discussion, and that element of the freedom. I see it like that. It is like a bird has had 3 hours of flight. And now here the bird sits down on a tree and rests. They say, well, it can be even, let's say, something that does not necessarily make sense. It's the element of the pleasure, the plaisir. Plaisir, we say, well, does plaisir has to be logical? No, plaisir is not logical. Plaisir is not logical. I say, well, if I say the color blue, what feeling I will feel in you? I say, well, if I tell you something that I speak the color red, maybe you will feel better, no? So, well, are colors in the words, and what Clauneck knows. There are some type of riddles. So, it is element of pleasure. You say, well, even the intellectual has pleasures. You say, well, what's the purpose to be intellectual if you don't have pleasures? You say, well, you are not an intellectual if you don't have pleasures. You have to have pleasures to be an intellectual. We say, well, there is an element of the king. So, well, I repeat the same sentence because it does carry different meaning. That's how I work in my grimoires as well. To say, yes, I say, well, if I put here the name, it will sound like this. But how can I make it that it fits to the, it goes into those little points as well, my work. As it should be, if I was to write a theater play, I have to give the exclamation points, or I have to give the right scene of the right emotion. It is a very logical, as I say, mathematical type of mind to be a writer. To say, well, a writer, you must have been good in literature when you were young, and it is true, but it has nothing to do with the literature. Writing, it is finally a mechanical process. If I was to, it works on the mechanic, which means the hand. The hand is mâna, manus, the element of the most developed part of our body. You say, well, it is something that it is connected, of course, to our intellect. And we work too with proportions. And say, well, in a different way. It is not mathematics. It's not at the level of the mathematics. And of course, they are totally different. Say, well, yes, it is a different aspect, no? It is different. But if we were to look at the core of it, say what numbers and letters or cifras or cifrus, no, the element of the Romanian, we say cifra, cipher in English, that's the element of the key, the decipher or cipher or the cifra, the cifra, actually it's a very old word for the word word as well. You know, language can get complicated, and so I can go back, you know, and say, well, how it moves. You say, well, I work with words, I work with letters, I work with text, I work with that part of the book, and it is a fast work, it is a mechanical work as well. It is true, you know, it does not take it away from its beauty. It is, you know, I have to work it, I have to work my fingers, I have to write, I have to, and going back to Clauneck, say, well, you know, interesting questions or interesting discussion can bring one to very beautiful realization. Of course, that's the goal or the element of Clauneck, that element of magic that comes back to you. And this element, when something is revealed, like expect for a revelation, you know, little present in there. That's the element of that beauty, you know. Of course, the moment gives. Of course, you say, well, I'm able to recognize it, no? That's the part. And so, well, I can be outside in the total darkness and see the beautiful sky, and, you know, that's it. That's the moment, you know. It's not necessarily with the other, but of course, in different situations, one is with others, no? It's that element where more people, so one says, oh, look at the sky, and everyone is looking at the sky, you know. It is beautiful, it is simple, it is nothing, so well, Clauneck, you know, likes to give courage, I think, in one way or another. I find him very courageous, the way he appears, the way he represents himself. He's very sure of himself, and that's the magic element that creates that moment being special, because they say, well, of course, Clauneck knows who he is, and it is beautiful, no? Clauneck is very beautiful. Clauneck is very beautiful man. So, well, it is very positive, very pleasant, very beautiful. So, well, this element of the interesting part, you know. So, well, the interesting part, you say, is very much connected to who he is. It is very much his persona, and as I said, he has a very beautiful. So, well, say, you know, the element of beauty. Say, well, the element of beauty is always ravishing. Beauty is ravishing, you know. So, well, beauty always has been. Something that takes the eye away, you know, or something that it changes something in that moment. Let's say, it's like, well, there is the element too, I think, of Clauneck as well, if I was to describe that. And the big thematic for me is that element of the plaisir, of the pleasure. In Romanian, piacere. In Italian, piacere. And yeah, so there is this recognition of that moment, and the way he appears, you say, well, the two is a very interesting connection, a very interesting element of the way Clauneck represents himself. And I think it is a very beautiful appearance of Clauneck always. I think it's very positive, very beautiful, very interesting as well. Of course, let's say the element of interest is very much Clauneck. And to say, well, in the description or in the image, we see Clauneck as a prince. But to say, well, if I say prince and king are synonym, it's the same. The prince will be a king, the king was a prince. No, it's a synonym. I say, of course, it's the same. And the element of the prince does represent, of course, more element of the young element, or of that freedom, you know. And the king, of course, sounds a little bit more like, I don't know. We say, well, the king, we see the crown, no? But the prince, you say, well, he is not yet the king. He does not yet carry the crown, but he will, no? It's the element of the prince becoming the king. And I always see him a little bit like the same way we see him on the throne, but in like a big room, and I see like sand outside, or some type of temple or room, and there's like sand. It's like a very hot desert area, like that element of the sand as well. And there's this element of that palace as well that I saw in this photo, where it is more like snow and cold outside, but it's very beautiful. That's well the place now of Clauneck. That's Clauneck, to say it's always surrounded by beauty, an element of beauty. It is almost like a flower that is ornamented, very beautiful. That vegetation element, like this Baroque style or Oriental. No, the element of the leaves comes out, and it's very beautiful. Like everything around him is very beautiful. If the sand is not just simple sand, it's that really gorgeous, golden, beautiful white sand, very fine, or that's very much Clauneck as well. So well, if it is a wine, it's very good, maybe like French wine, no? So well, it's like I can practice my pronunciation on the French wines. No, so while we have the red Bordeaux, no, we have the Chianti, no, the red too. Sometimes they come in white and red. Then we have the Riesling, or I don't know what other white wines. There are of course many other names. Or there are specific Romanian ones too, I know. But the element of the wine, no? So well, the element of the elixir too, no? Of course, the wine. It's words which have this X in it, X, the elixir, the exquisite. X is like a rare letter, no? So well, X does not appear in many words, and it is a letter more in the end of the alphabet, no? It's X, Y, Z. So the X, no? It's more unique, exactly as the Y or the Z. And thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen another recording of mine, you can do either the playlist of Clauneck or other playlists of mine in the description box below. And thank you so much for listening. Until next time, bye.